be able to welcome our keynote speaker today, Dr. Peter Lovatt. Peter Lovatt is a dance psychologist. Peter has spent his life thinking about, teaching, and writing about how humans are transformed by movement. Peter Lovatt is the co-founder of the Movement in Practice Academy and is a specialist provider of education in the psychology of movement and dance. Peter spent 20 years working in university research labs. He set up the first dance psychology lab in 2008, from where he studied how movement changes the way people think and solve problems, how it changes social interaction and increases pro-social behavior, and how movement changes people's feelings. Peter's new book, The Dance Cure, which was published in short books in 2020, is available to buy. I'll also tell you about one more book in a second. Dr. Lovatt's work has been reported on TV, radio, and in the national and international press, through which he has become known as Dr. Dance. He's been invited to give many keynotes around the world and has delivered 5 TEDx talks. Peter has also been invited to many popular TV shows. I'm quite excited about all of these, including The Graham Norton Show, The Alan Titchmarsh Show, Britain's Got Talent, and has been interviewed on national radio programs such as Saturday Live and The Women's Hour. Peter's first academic book, Dance Psychology, The Science of Dance and Dancers, was published in 2018. Peter has spoken at a wide range of international conferences where he's addressed policymakers, business leaders, and government ministers from around the world. In 2019, Peter shared keynote sessions with Oprah Winfrey, Barack Obama, Richard Branson, and Gina Davis. And I first met Peter in the context that you're in right now, in a conference. And what he delivered is what you're about to experience, and I have to tell you, you're in for a real treat. I know no one who encapsulates the joy of dance in the way that Peter does. Dance is a powerful tool to support physical and mental health and provides unparalleled opportunities for expression, creativity, and the development of problem-solving skills. Every one of the people in this room is here because they believe in the power of dance and want to ensure every child has a positive experience of dance. I'm really proud to introduce Dr. Lovatt, who will help us all gain a greater insight into the science behind this incredible art form. Thank you very much, Peter.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Erin, for that introduction. Thank you very much. And thank you both for inviting me as well. I'm sure honoured to be here. So thank you. Well, hello, everyone. I'm only going to talk for about 15 minutes this morning and or this afternoon. And so I'll jump straight in. So as you know, I'm a scientist, and I've been studying the science of dance and dancers for many years. And that's why I love it. I'm trying to understand why humans dance. Really understanding why humans don't dance as well. Where does the conflict come in? What happens to people when they dance and when they move? And how is dance and movement good for people's well-being? What I want to talk to you about today is about my experience of growing up in dance. Because, of course, this event is all about growing up in dance, and I grew up in dance as well. So I've been a research scientist and an academic for many years. But before that, I was a professional dancer. And I loved being a professional dancer. I loved traveling around the world, dancing in musical shows, and I loved all of that. And before that, I was in school, growing up. And I hated being in school. I think I hated being in school more than I've hated anything else in my life since. And school was this really horrible, sterile environment. And it was really horrible and sterile for me because I couldn't read and write properly. And when you can't read and write properly, you then tend to fail a great many things. And that was certainly my experience of school. So when I was 11, 12, 13, 14 being in school and trying to learn, I simply couldn't learn. The teacher would say, read this paragraph in a book, and I wouldn't be able to read the paragraph in the book. And then they'd say, let's do an exam, and I'd write the exam, and I couldn't write it down, and so I'd fail the exam. And when you do that repeatedly enough all the way through school, you become a certified failure, because you fail so often and you get certificates in failure, literally from the school. But I was really lucky, because my school, I went to school called Beaumont School in St Albans, and my school had a dance group. And the dance group was called Colour Supplement. And I joined Colour Supplement. I was the only boy for many years in colour supplement. So when I went to a comprehensive school, when I joined the school dance group and I would dance, then the world felt completely different. So whereas sitting in the classroom, I was kind of depressed, angry, frustrated, going through all that kind of teenage years of feeling like a failure. When I was in the dance studio, I came alive. It was amazing. And I could think differently. My relationships with people were different. My thinking and problem solving skills were different. Everything seemed to be different. And my emotions were certainly different when I was there dancing. So the contrast between those two environments were really stark for me. As a scientist, I believe humans are born to dance. And for me, I was very lucky that in my primary school, we had country dancing. And I really enjoyed being in the country dancing team and dancing along there. Then I went to secondary school, and at the first couple of years, I didn't join the colour supplement dance group, but I always danced. I used to dance, and I used to live on this big main road in St Albans, and we had a window looking out onto this road, and at night, of course, the lights on the inside would make it a mirror. And I'd be playing kind of 1970s groovy music and just kind of freaking out in front of this mirror and feeling fantastic. But the thinking and problem solving wasn't quite so good when it came to reading and writing. We know that when people can't read and write properly, it leads to a whole range of negative characteristics. We know, for instance, that when people have poor literacy skills, they tend to have fewer friends than people who have good literacy skills. They're less likely to pass exams. They're therefore less likely to get the jobs that they want. So they become despondent and they get angry. We know there's a relationship also between poor reading and writing skills and antisocial behaviour, such that people with poor reading and writing skills have higher levels of antisocial behaviour. And that was certainly the case for me for lots of my teenage years. I fit that profile a lot. And I think without the opportunity to dance and have a dance group at school, I would have gone down the route with many of my colleagues at the time, and I would have got in more trouble with the law, and I probably would have ended up in prison as well. We know that about 20% of people leave school with poor reading and writing skills, but in our prisons, we have about 80% of our prisoners have poor reading and writing skills, and these two things are not unrelated. So for me, dancing was fantastic. So I was able to join Colour Supplement, and I loved dancing. When I danced, I felt completely alive. But one of the really interesting points about dancing as a teenager was the grief I got for that from my other fellow students. So the grief was just completely overwhelming sometimes. One day, some kids found my ballet shoes in my bag. And that was just red rag to a bunch of bulls. It was just terrifying for a bit. And, so there's a whole lot of stuff going on where you get all kinds of abuse for dancing, particularly as a boy. And yet, throughout all that abuse, the love I felt in dance and the safety that I felt when I was dancing completely outweighed all of that aggression. Because it was really aggressive when you get bullied. I remember once, it must have been the late 1970s, and for this language I apologise, but I'm just quoting, so I apologise if I was offended by this language. I was offended by the language too. In St Albans, we have St Albans FC Football Club. And St Albans Football Club said to our school, oh look, would the Colour Supplement want to come and dance in the centre circle at the interval of this football match on a Saturday afternoon? So our dance teacher, Mrs. Reed, thought, that's a great idea. And so we all went out into this middle of this pitch, and we're sitting there, and I think we're dancing to, I don't know, some Boney M song, I think it was. And we were dancing away, and suddenly I could hear, who's the pufter on the pitch? Who's the pufter, who's the pufter, who's the pufter on the pitch, la 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 la. And there are about 20 or 30 people in the stands singing this. And I'm thinking, who are they singing about? What's going on here? And of course it was me, because we were all dressed in leotards and tights with catsuits. So I had this kind of purple catsuit on, cotton lycra catsuit and nothing else. And I was 14 or 15. So my body was kind of making shapes in all different sort of places. And there I was with this other group of dancers who were all female. And so this was the kind of abuse we used to get back in the 1970s when boys danced. But despite that, the love of dance completely overtook that, and I kept dancing. So I was very lucky. When I left school without any qualifications, and I couldn't read and write. But I was very lucky to then I went to the Guildford School of Acting, where they had a dancers course. And I got onto the dancers course there, and then the dancers course closed down and moved on to the musical theatre course. And then when I left GSA, I went to work in professional theatre as a dancer. And I had a fantastic time being in musical theatre shows and travelling around and doing all this amazing stuff. And I had this time when I was doing panto at the Richmond Theatre, and there was a moment where everything changed. There was just one moment, and the whole world changed for me. Throughout my whole life, I'd always thought that I was really stupid and thick and incapable of learning anything, and failing at everything academically kind of reinforced that. And there was this moment where we're rehearsing, and then at the beginning of the rehearsal period, we had 2 weeks rehearsal for this show. All the musicians came in, and the musicians were working with, they had their musical director, and they had their dots on the score, and they were learning their notes. And then the opening night of the show, the orchestra would have a conductor, and they had their notes in front of them, and everything was fantastic. Now the actors had to do something slightly more difficult than that. They came onto the stage, and they then had their book, and they learnt their words, and they actually came off the book, and eventually then, on the opening night of the show, there was somebody in prompt corner who would shout out their lines to them. So this was when Anita Dobson was playing Aladdin in this pantomime. And it was the year, for those of you that remember, where Dirty Den did the dirty on that. And Sophia DeVos was on their Christmas Day. It was that Christmas. Well, I was doing panto with that. And anyway, she needed the prompt corner occasionally. But as dancers, we did something completely different. As dancers, we came on in the rehearsal period, and a choreographer would go up and have one of these, and a bum, 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 and we just, we learned the choreography. And you wouldn't write it down, or you couldn't film yourself then. You just had to remember these movements. And you had to remember about 2 hours worth of choreography. And I thought then, blimey, if I'm capable of learning 2 hours worth of choreography without writing anything down, I mean, imagine if the musicians had to do that. Let's imagine the musicians coming in and not having anything written down in front of them. They just had to hear someone going, right, you can go, and they played it. Well, let's imagine the actors had to come on stage and the director simply read them their lines and they had to remember it. They wouldn't be able to. But as dancers, we do that. It's extraordinary. And I thought, gosh, if I'm capable of learning that amount of choreography, then I must surely be capable of learning how to read and write. So I set out using what I knew about dance to help me to learn to read and write. And of course, that process was fraught with failure too, but I'd learned to read and write in a couple of years. And then I tried then to do some exams. I did an A-level in psychology. And I got a grade D in my A-level psychology, which I was delighted with. It was a delightful D. And then I applied for university, and they all turned me down and said, no, go away. And so the next year I did another A-level in English, and I failed the A-level in English. But by then, a university gave me a place to study psychology and English. And then after that, I went to study that, and then I won a scholarship after that to do a master's degree in neural computation, which is the mathematical modeling of brain functions. But then after that, I did my PhD in experimental cognitive neuroscience. And then after that, I was at Cambridge University. And in Cambridge University, I was in the Faculty of English, working as a psychologist, trying to understand how the human brain does languages. How does the human brain process multiple languages? And of course, we always thought at Cambridge that the first language is your first verbal language, is English, German, or Arabic, whatever it is. But actually, our first language isn't that. Our first language is movement. And what's extraordinary is we communicate so much through our movement. And other people, the other brain has to pick that information up and carry it forward. So then at that point, I decided then to start using the science I'd learned and apply it to movement and dance. Because I believe humans are born to dance, and I believe movement is our first form of communication. It's really fundamental. So then after that, I then wrote a book, and I was very pleased to write a book, because when you can't read and write for so many years, and you fail every single written exam you've ever done, and you've never passed an English exam, to actually put the words together to write a book feels like an achievement. So I was very pleased to have written that book. So I'm not putting it there as I think, I'm just saying it was, it's meaningful. But the key to that book was dance. And the key to me dancing was dance teachers. And without the dance teacher in our school, I probably would have ended up like the other kids who didn't dance, and I've ended up in the criminal justice system, and I wouldn't have got a dream job, which I've currently got. So thank you to all the dance teachers, because you are lifesavers, so do more of it, and demand higher pay, because your contribution is so valuable. Right, so before I tell you about some of the research that we do, because I'm going to do this research about dance, I'd like you all please to stand up for me. Could you stand up? Lovely, I just need to demonstrate a bit of research, and this is relevant to we're growing up in dance. So could you all just kind of step onto your right foot that way, and close your foot in? Lovely, and step the other way, and close that one. We're going to go a step, and a step. Lovely. Now just imagine you're at a kind of RAD guidance disco, right? So just imagine you're at a disco or a party or something. Let's have some music. And let's have some music. Is that going to go? Oh no, that's the next one, some music. Let's have some. Oh, that's so bit. That's we can hear, please. Oh, you can hear that? Oh, lovely. So what I want you to do now is feel that groove. That's a bit louder, please, as well. Feel that groove. Now, I want you to imagine you're at a club or something. And I want you to imagine that the most beautiful person in the world in your eyes has just walked in the room. Lovely. And that person thinks that you are the most beautiful, amazing person in the world. And now they're looking into your eyes, you're looking into their eyes, and it feels fantastic. I'll get the jacket off. Okay, we're properly groovy now. Okay, so there's just you and that person in the room. Oh, lovely. And feel that groove. Okay. Okay, you can take a seat now, please. So how does it feel to have a boogie? It feels amazing, doesn't it? It feels lovely to have a boogie. Well, we know that when people have a good boogie, it enhances their well-being. I mean, and you probably see that in every single class that you do. But one of the other funny facts about this from science is that the way you were dancing just then was influenced by something really fundamental about who you are. According to some researchers, and I didn't make this up, maybe they did, but some other researchers suggested that the way you were dancing just then was influenced by the relative size of your ears. Now, they didn't just measure the size of your ears, they measured the size of your ears, your fingers, they measured everything you had two of. It doesn't matter how big or small those things are, it's how big one is compared to the other. So the size of your ears, fingers, measure these, measure these, measure these. They measured everything you have two of. And what they found is that some people are highly symmetrical, such that their ears are about the same size, and their fingers are about the same size, these are about the same size, these are about the same size, everything's about the same size. And some people are highly asymmetric, such that one ear is bigger than the other, and so we get this kind of change across the body. And then they took dance samples from these people, and then asked to rate them. So here's the research that was carried out. Have a quick look at this. Can we have some body, please?
200 subjects in an anthropological study in Jamaica. Motion capture equipment was used to collect the positions of reflective markers attached to subjects with elastic bands to tape. These marker positions allowed us to generate a skeleton of a gangster, an animated skeleton using inverse mimetic software. The animated skeleton was then transformed into a simple character that accurately represents the dance motion of the subject. This simple character, we were able to remove inherent external biases from the test, such as clothing, the sex or looks of the subject, or the appearance of the dance area. And since it's a 3D animation, we can also completely change the viewing angle to help our viewers more accurately assess the dancing of the subjects.
So what they did, they took videos of people and they turned them into the animations. And what they found was some people were highly physically symmetrical and some people were less physically symmetrical. And then they asked people to rate the dancing on different dimensions, and this one was on danceability. And what they report, this was published in Nature a long time ago now, but what they found was that symmetrical males are rated as having a higher danceability than asymmetric males. And that symmetrical females were rated as having higher danceability than asymmetric females, which seems rather extraordinary. Now, when we first saw these data, we simply didn't believe them. We thought, how can it be the case that something to do with this is influenced through the way that you move? And so what we then did, we took over a nightclub, and we had 800 people in this nightclub, and we measured all of them dancing in a normal nightclub environment. So they were dancing on the floor here. And then we measured all kinds of people dancing. We took video footage and took dance samples from them. And before that, we measured not only their genetic makeup, but also their hormonal levels as well. We wanted to see, as other scientists have found, that the way you move is influenced by your hormonal and your genetic makeup. Now, there are these two different people here who've got different hormonal levels. This young woman here she was on the most fertile stage of her cycle during this particular filming episode. And we then, for the men, measured their testosterone levels. And we had some men with a very low level of testosterone, and like this chap here. And we had some men with very much higher levels of testosterone, a bit like this chap here. And so then if you ask people to rate the dancing, people find it much more interesting to look at people like this with the higher testosterone than with the lower testosterone. So one of the things here we found is that high testosterone men dance in a way that other people find amazing. This chap also had high testosterone, this chap is somebody's son. And so they're all dancing rather amazingly. But what's most interesting about this for us is that the way you move your body is influenced by your hormones and your genes. Now, of course, this is important for growing up in dance, because, of course, as you go through puberty, your hormones change completely. And then, of course, your motivation to dance might change, and the way you express your movements might change. And not only is that important from a dancer's perspective, it also matters, as this research suggests, that when people watch you dancing, they make ratings about you based on your natural movement patterns. And it affects all kinds of transactions that you do. So the way that young people move will change as their fertility changes. There will be this massive change over the puberty time. And then for people who identify as females menstruating, their hormones will change across the monthly cycle, which will impact the way they move across the monthly cycle. And for men as well, the way they move, that will change with their development too. And not only changes inside them, it'll change the way that other people interact with them. I found I used to love going night clubbing. Well, two examples, I'm running over time, so I apologise, I'm gabbling through, but two things to say, and then I'll be gone, I promise. So the two things to say are all these things change. One is that I've got two sons. I've got Digby, who's now 25, and I've got Romeo, who's 10. And Digby used to belong to a hip-hop dance group, and he belonged to it from when he was sort of 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and everything was going great. And he belonged to this dance group, and he belonged to their performance company, which he absolutely loved. He went to 2 or 3 classes a week, and then would be part of the performance company at the weekend. One day we got a call from the person who ran that dance school to say, I'm sorry, Digby can't be in the performance company anymore. And I said, oh, why is that then? And she said, well, all the girls have developed, and Digby hasn't quite developed yet. And we want to change the style of the dancing based on their development. Basically, what this dance school did, they put the girls in short skirts and crop tops, and they were doing more kind of, I suppose, sexy dancing. These are 13, 14-year-old girls. And they said because Digby still hadn't quite developed, then he didn't quite fit into that look and feel. So he then was excluded from dance based on that developmental stage, that idea that his body hadn't, I mean, he's now 6'3", and he's like this, but at the time, you think, gosh, why would you exclude somebody from a recreational dance group based on their biological development? And why change in that? So people use that a great deal. And the other thing I want to say is, so for me, going clubbing, and through my development, I used to love it from 16, 17, 18. I used to go to the Pink Elephant in Southgate. I used to go to the Empire Ballroom, Leicester Square, and do all that kind of, the Lyceum Ballroom on the Strand, get all that, and heaven. I used to love going to heaven and grooving in heaven. Well, and I love that expressiveness. But very often, and we know that there's a way of people can use dance. And so for me, belonging to a dance group, dancing recreationally, was a really important part of my growing up. And I think if I didn't have dance in my developing years, my life wouldn't be 1/10 of the joy that I get from my life now. So thank you to all the dance teachers. Thank you very much.